Wembley is waiting. Manchester City are waiting. And inside Cobham, Chelsea's final training session before the FA Cup final reportedly felt like the entire season hanging by a thread. Because this isn't just another cup game anymore. For Chelsea, this final means everything. A trophy, Europa League football, pride, momentum heading into a massive summer. And maybe most importantly, proof that this club still belongs among English football's elite. After months of chaos, pressure, managerial changes, injuries, fan protests, and emotional collapses, Saturday now feels like Chelsea's last opportunity to rescue meaning from this season. And judging by the intensity of training ahead of Wembley, the players know it. The atmosphere at Cobham reportedly changed the second the Liverpool match ended. No celebrations over the draw at Anfield. No satisfaction with improvement. The message from Calum McFarlane was immediate. Forget Liverpool. Forget the noise. Forget the pressure. Now survive Wembley. Because Manchester City don't just beat teams tactically, they suffocate them psychologically. Once they control rhythm, matches begin feeling hopeless. Possession becomes exhausting. Defending becomes panic. Players stop believing they can escape pressure. Chelsea have experienced that feeling too many times against City over recent years. So this final training session reportedly became less about flashy football and more about emotional preparation for suffering. Real suffering. The type only elite finals create. Players reportedly arrived early Friday morning, with the coaching staff already setting up shape drills before the full squad even entered the pitches. There was no relaxed energy around Cobham, no laughter dominating the session, no casual rondos designed for social media clips. Everything reportedly felt sharp, controlled, focused. Because everybody inside Chelsea understands one brutal reality. If City score first early at Wembley, things could spiral quickly. That's why McFarlane's final tactical message reportedly focused heavily on emotional discipline. Not panic, not frustration, not forcing moments emotionally. Chelsea's biggest weakness all season has been psychological instability once matches become difficult. Against City, that weakness becomes fatal. So training reportedly started with compact defensive wave exercises designed specifically to simulate Manchester City's relentless possession. The likely starting 11 repeatedly defended long passing sequences while coaches constantly repositioned players whenever defensive distances became stretched. Every movement mattered. Every line shift mattered. Every recovery run mattered. McFarlane reportedly stopped drills repeatedly whenever midfielders abandoned structure too aggressively while pressing. Because City want opponents emotionally chasing the ball. That's the trap. The moment defensive shape becomes desperate, gaps appear everywhere. And then players like Erling Haaland and Phil Foden punish you instantly. Chelsea cannot allow the game to become emotionally chaotic, not for 1 second. One major boost for the Blues ahead of Wembley is the return of several key players. Sanchez, Pedro Neto, and Alejandro Garnacho are all reportedly available again after missing the Liverpool clash. And honestly, Neto's return could completely change Chelsea's attacking strategy. Why? Because against City, transition speed becomes everything. You rarely dominate possession against Guardiola's side. Your moments come suddenly and disappear quickly. That means every counter-attack must be ruthless. Neto gives Chelsea direct explosiveness they badly lacked at Anfield. During final training, he reportedly looked extremely sharp during transition drills. Repeatedly driving aggressively into open spaces, the second possession changed hands. McFarlane appears determined to use that pace as one of Chelsea's main weapons at Wembley. The idea seems clear. Absorb pressure, stay compact, explode vertically. And that tactical approach honestly makes sense. Trying to outpossess City is usually suicide. Meanwhile, Reece James reportedly became one of the dominant voices throughout the final session. And this matters massively, because Wembley finals are emotional events before they're tactical ones. Pressure changes everything. Players lose composure. Decision-making speeds up. Mistakes multiply. Chelsea have lacked leadership during difficult moments for most of the season. James changes the emotional atmosphere immediately. Sources around training suggest the Chelsea captain was heavily involved throughout shapework and pressing exercises, constantly communicating with younger players and demanding concentration levels remain high. At one point during defensive transition drills, James reportedly stopped moving himself just to reposition teammates vocally before restarting the phase. That leadership is priceless, especially against City, because Guardiola's side constantly manipulate defensive uncertainty. The moment communication drops, they punish spaces instantly. James understands this better than most. Tactically, Chelsea's final session reportedly revolved heavily around one key concept: controlled aggression. Not passive defending, not reckless pressing. Controlled aggression. Chelsea know they cannot simply sit inside their own box for 90 minutes at Wembley. Eventually, City break you down if you become too passive. But they also know overcommitting emotionally would be disastrous. So McFarlane reportedly worked extensively on mid-block pressing structures rather than ultra-high pressing. The idea appears to involve allowing City-controlled possession in less dangerous areas before triggering coordinated pressure once certain passing lanes open. That requires enormous discipline. One player pressing too early ruins everything. And Chelsea have struggled with that collectively this season. But during the final training session, coaches reportedly demanded constant synchronization between midfield and defensive lines. No individual hero pressing. Everyone moves together, or nobody moves. The likely inclusion of Levi Colwill also changes Chelsea structurally. His calmness on the ball becomes incredibly important against City's press. During build-up drills Friday, Colwill reportedly spent long periods working specifically on vertical progression under pressure. Rather than immediately clearing danger, coaches encourage defenders to remain composed and trust passing patterns through midfield. Why? Because panicked clearances against City simply restart pressure again. The only way to breathe against Guardiola teams is controlled possession during the few moments available. That's where Colwill becomes vital. Unfortunately for Chelsea, the injury list still remains painful. Jamie Gittins remains unavailable. His debut season has been massively disrupted by injuries and inconsistency, and the timing couldn't be worse. Then there's Estevão Willian. The Brazilian wonder kid missing the final due to a serious hamstring injury feels cruel considering how much excitement surrounded him earlier in the season. Inside Chelsea, there's reportedly huge frustration because Estevão's unpredictability could have been a dangerous weapon against City's high defensive structure. Meanwhile, young winger Jesse Derry continues recovering after the horrible head injury suffered earlier this month. And of course, Mykhailo Mudryk remains suspended while appealing his ban situation. That's 4 unavailable attacking options heading into the biggest game of Chelsea's season, which means responsibility now falls heavily on the available forwards. One fascinating aspect of Chelsea's final session reportedly involved repeated counter-attacking scenarios beginning from deep defensive recoveries. The coaching staff constantly recreated moments where Chelsea regained possession near their own penalty area before immediately breaking into open space. The emphasis? Decision-making speed. Against City, hesitation kills counter-attacks. You may only get 3 or 4 genuine transition opportunities all match. Waste them, and the game becomes almost impossible. That's why Neto and Joao Pedro reportedly spent extensive periods working together during transition patterns. Pedro's intelligence between lines combined with Neto's explosiveness could become Chelsea's most important attacking combination at Wembley, especially if City commit numbers forward aggressively. And then there's the goalkeeper situation. Sanchez returning is huge psychologically, not because he's had a flawless season, far from it, but because continuity matters enormously before finals. Switching goalkeepers under this kind of pressure can destabilize defensive confidence quickly. Training reportedly included long periods focused specifically on defending crosses and second-phase deliveries, knowing City frequently create chaos through recycled possession around the box. Chelsea's defenders were repeatedly drilled on maintaining concentration after initial clearances rather than relaxing too early, because City specialise in punishing second moments. That's where so many teams collapse mentally. Another huge focus during training was set pieces. And honestly, this could be Chelsea's biggest opportunity. In open play, City will likely dominate possession and territorial control for long periods. But finals are often decided by dead ball moments. Chelsea reportedly practiced aggressive attacking corner routines repeatedly Friday morning, particularly targeting near-post movements and blocked runs designed to disrupt City's zonal structure. With James delivering quality consistently, Chelsea know one perfect set piece could completely change the match. Defensively, however, concentration becomes equally critical. City are masters at manipulating attention during restarts. One player switches off for half a second, and suddenly the ball is in the net. McFarlane reportedly demanded absolute focus throughout every defensive set-piece repetition. No casual reactions, no sleeping runners, no emotional distractions. What's interesting is how different Chelsea's mentality appears compared to earlier in the season. Months ago, this squad looked emotionally fragile almost every week. Now, there are signs of resilience slowly returning. The draw at Anfield mattered psychologically. Not because Chelsea dominated, but because they finally survived difficult moments without collapsing completely. That experience reportedly influenced the tone of this final training session massively. Players now believe they can suffer collectively. That belief changes everything heading into Wembley. There was also reportedly a heavy emphasis on game management during the latter stages of training. One scenario repeatedly rehearsed involved Chelsea protecting narrow leads late in matches. Another involved chasing games calmly without losing defensive structure. That's important, because Chelsea have repeatedly looked emotionally reckless during difficult moments this season. McFarlane appears desperate to avoid emotional chaos at Wembley, especially against a side as ruthless as City. And perhaps the strongest sign of growing belief inside the squad came during the final internal practice match. Sources suggest intensity levels became extremely high, with challenges flying in aggressively and players celebrating goals loudly. Not relaxed confidence, competitive confidence, the type built through desperation. Because for many Chelsea players, this final represents redemption. For James, a chance to lead again. For Neto, a chance to prove his importance. For Colwill, a chance to announce his return properly. For McFarlane, a chance to shock football completely. And for the fans, a chance to finally feel proud again after months of frustration. The tactical battle itself will be fascinating. Guardiola will likely attempt to suffocate Chelsea centrally through overloads and possession control. Chelsea, meanwhile, appear prepared to defend compactly before attacking space quickly through direct vertical transitions. In many ways, it's classic cup final football. Control versus chaos, structure versus explosiveness, patience versus moments. And honestly, finals rarely follow tactical scripts perfectly. Emotion always enters eventually. That's why mentality may decide everything. One thing becoming increasingly clear from this final training session is that Chelsea are not approaching Wembley scared. Respectful? Yes. Aware of City's quality? Absolutely. But scared? No. McFarlane reportedly wants courage with discipline, belief with structure, aggression without panic. Whether Chelsea can actually deliver that under Wembley pressure remains the biggest question of all. But at least heading into the final, the signs inside Cobham suggest this team finally understands the size of the challenge ahead. After months of chaos, criticism, and disappointment, Chelsea now stand one game away from ending the season with silverware. Manchester City remain favourites. The pressure is enormous, and Wembley will test every part of this Chelsea team mentally and tactically. But after the intensity of this final training session, there are signs the Blues are finally ready to fight like a real team again. So Chelsea fans, can the Blues shock Guardiola and lift the FA Cup? Or will City prove too strong once again? Subscribe to Chelsea Talk Daily for all the latest Chelsea news, tactical analysis, transfer updates, and Wembley final coverage.